The first thing you want to do when you change your table saw blade out for your dado set is you need to take off the regular blade. So the best way to do that is to raise it all the way up till it tops out, and then you can take your zero clearance insert, which is wood. You don't want to do this with a metal one, but if it's wood, you can do this. You can stop the blade as you loosen the arbor nut. So doesn't take much. Remember, that arbor nut does not have to be on that tight. It's just hand tight. So when you take it off, it doesn't take a lot of force. Now with 80 tooth blades, it's a little harder because the gullets are smaller. So when you put this in there, it doesn't have a spot for that blade to really go into. So you just kind of have to push it up against as you pull it down to loosen that nut up. And if you have any sawdust on the threads, you should clean it off. Okay, now we can take this off and put this away, or for right now, we'll put it to the side. And always set this on wood, not metal. So do not set this on the cast iron tabletop. Now, this is the stacked dado set that I have. You can use any kind, but essentially what you're going to find is they're all pretty much going to be very similar in the way that they operate. These are individual cutters, so to speak, individual blades that create the thickness that you need. And you can use washers to add width to these pieces if they're not the right size right out of the gate. These are going to be 1/8 inch wide, these ones. So these are the outside chippers. And the way you can tell the outside is if this isn't on it, this side out, if that's not on it, then what you need to do is essentially look for the writing. Normally the writing is going to be the outside. But what that could mean is that could be the left too, right? But if you look at the way the teeth are pointing, they're pointing backwards. So the carbide teeth have to be pointing forward in order for that to cut right. So this is the only way you could put this on. It's pretty straightforward. Make sure it's seated nice. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your other one. That goes on last. Put that aside. Now all these are separated by these plastic discs. These are really cool to have. So you need to make sure you keep these with this set and always keep them separated. The chippers, now these are 4 teeth chippers. So put these on exactly the same way. The carbide's facing me, facing you, and put it on. And as you put it on, make sure that your teeth don't touch the teeth of the outside chipper, and just make sure that they're actually seated against each other nice and tightly. It's kind of easy to get them kind of cross-threaded, so you want to make sure that they're nice and flat on each other. Now some sets have 2 teeth chippers. Some sets have 3. Some sets have 4. It just depends on the actual set. Okay, so these are all 1/8 inch chippers, but this set comes with a 3/32 inch chipper, and I just write that on there so that I can see it. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I write down 3/32. So that's the one I'm going to use. Now I know how thick this wood is that I'm working with, this ultralight MDF. If I wanted to have this fit a little bit thicker wood, I could put the 1/16 chipper on it, and this is just going to be a little bit thinner than the 3/32. So if I have a little thinner wood or plywood, I would use this. But in this case, what I'm using is the 3/32, and they're just it's a 30-second difference. That's all that is. But I'm not going to use this. And then there's, of course, another 1/8 inch chipper in this set to allow for, you know, full 3/4 of an inch thickness when you're cutting these guys. All right. So with that said, we want to make sure we put this outside chipper on. Now, if you're going to add shims, now is the time to do that. Right before you put that outside chipper on, you can add shims like these or whatever shims your set comes with. These are nice because they're metal, they're strong, but I number them so that when the next time I go to use this set, I make a note. If by chance I use both of these shims, I'll put number 1 and number 2 shim, and I number all these. Some of them are really, really thin, but I number them all the way up to 10 or whatever it is. Okay, now double check that your teeth are not touching, and if they're not touching in one spot, then that means they're not going to be touching anywhere on that particular blade. So you just want to double check they're all clear. You do not want the teeth touching each other. Put this back on. So this is an 8-inch set. This saw could use a 10-inch set also, but I've always used 8-inch. A 6-inch will work also. And then just go ahead and hand tighten that, and that's it. When you use this, it'll tighten itself up even more as you actually use it. These ones you put back in, and now I can get rid of this guy for when I'm ready. Now, if you don't know the particular width that you need, then you're going to have to take some sample cuts and see how they fit. What I would suggest is take a cut on scrap a piece of wood, and you could take that scrap piece of wood and you can use that forever. Don't get rid of it, and write down what it is for that piece. Like it's, you know, all the chippers plus the 1/16, or all the chippers plus the 3/32. In this case, it's 3 1/8 inch chippers plus a 3/32 chipper, plus the outside chippers. So this is going to give me a little bit less than 3/4 of an inch thickness. So this is my piece of scrap. I mean, I have a lot of these, but what I do whenever I'm doing anything out of the ordinary, I always check the fit with this. I just take it right to the workpiece before I even do anything here. I'll take it right to the workpiece and I'll check it to see what fits. Like for instance, this piece here is one of the pieces I'm working with right now. So this is the thickness that I'm trying to match. Now what I want is that for that joint to be a little bit big, the groove, I don't want it to be too tight, because even this might have variations in the thickness. So I don't want this to be too tight. I want it to be just loose enough to be able to get in, no problem. So if you look here, there's all sorts of samples, and it's very simple. I even put down what kind of wood I was using for the sample, if that matters. But you basically go through here and you can see, like, okay, that's a little bit big. That's a little big. That's a bigger. That's bigger. So here's this right here. So we can look here and say, oh, wait, there's a good fit right there. So that's what I want right there, that fit. See that? How it fits in, but it's not too loose. It's definitely nice fit. And then, of course, when we paint it, we caulk everything, right? That joint gets caulked, but that's a nice tight fit. And I wrote down here, ultralight MDF, 3/4 inch, no spacers. So this is essentially all the outside cutters, with the chippers 1/8 inch, except for that one chipper, then that's 3/32. That's all that is. I have 3 of them that I use, and like I said, you can have some for 5/8 material. Sometimes if I use 5/8 material for melamine, if I ever use that stuff, but these work really well. Okay, so now we have this set up. It's in here, and it's always a good idea, even though you do this, run one sample test cut, because you want to make sure that the piece is actually what you think it is. There's no surprises. Now, you can't use this anymore, right? So you're going to have to use your, a Dado insert. Now you can buy these for your saws, or you can make them like this one. So making them is pretty straightforward. There's nothing really tricky about it. The best way to make these things is just to use your current, the one that came with the saw, and use that as a template, and then take this piece and essentially flush trim it, and you get your own custom made one. So when I make them, I make a whole bunch of them, and I use them for various things. And you can actually double these up. So if you wanted to have this one, right, you could actually flip it over, and you could have a dado set here and a regular saw blade there. So that's an option. You just have to remember that when you do that, sometimes the piece in the middle is going to be a little thin. It depends on how big the dado is. So I like to have my own dado set, but you could totally do that where you double them up, especially on the regular saw blades. All right, now, whenever you have wood inserts, the thing you're going to deal with is expansion and contraction. See that? So these things always move. And now I have these, I put this on the side of them so that if I ever want to, I can snug that up. And you can put them on both sides. I have holes for them on both sides. Or you can just keep them on one side, whatever you want. But either way, just make sure that thing's nice and tight so it doesn't, flow out of there. Now, I can actually tighten that up because right now we're at like 8% humidity. So the air is definitely dry. So now I could just back this out just a little bit. And this is a nice feature to add to your custom inserts. See how nice that is? Do that with the back too. I used to use tape, and the tape works good too, but after a while the tape starts to shred. So I prefer to use these, but it's nice. And just a little bit of a turn. That's all you need. Nice. That's really good. So anyways, make some of these if you don't know how to. I'm sure Google, or I could do a video as well. So ask me if you'd like to see that, and I'll put a video together on how to actually build these. And we'll build a whole bunch of them. Okay, now that you have this width set, the next thing is to drop it down and get the height set. So for all my dados for joinery, typically what I do is I make them like I'm talking about all these joints, like this dados right there, grooves, rabbets. Those are all cut with a 1/4 inch deep dado. So I need to set this to a 1/4 inch. The easiest way I know is to take this 1/4 inch cheap little gauge. You can get this pretty much anywhere. I'll link this actually, because these are very nice to have. It's very simple to set this up. Go to your blade and try to find out where the top center is. So basically I have a mark here. That's the top dead center, and that line. So if you put your gauge right at that line, and then you rotate your saw blade, you should feel, see that? Do you see that I'm basically if I move the saw blade under it, it kind of picks up my gauge and moves it. That means I'm just barely too high. Drop it down. And remember this, it doesn't take much to drop it down and be too much. See right there, I barely moved that and it's already, I mean, you barely touch the wheel and it moves. All right, so that guy right there is just perfect. And this guy, if you want to do the high alternate top bevel one and not the flat raker tooth, you can do that because that's going to give you your highest point, but the raker is going to give you the flat part. So if you have a set where the pointed part, the one that does the shearing, if that one is a little bit deeper, I would suggest using the raker. This set is really flat, so there's not really a big deal, but difference. But if I want to use that raker tooth, which is the flat tooth, I can come over here and do that same thing and just see where that's at. So if you take it over, it actually says radial saw this side down. So you could take it and actually pull your saw blade over it if you're raising it up a certain point, which is really cool. So if you're going to like do a tenon or something and you want it to be, 1 inch off the face of the material or the bottom, you could put it on your radial arm saw and just run it across. It also works for routers too. And this piece here is 2 1/4 inches. So you can use this as setup on your table saw for width too, which is very cool. 1/8 for the thickness here, that's a good setting. And I'm sure the whole width here, I don't know what that is, but I'm sure that's a dimension as well you could use. Width is set. We just need to take a little test cut and then we can figure out if we're ready to run all the pieces. Now when you want to do your test cuts, use some scrap piece. Usually you're going to have a little scrap wood left over from this job, your rough cutting and all that stuff. So put this down, always get that in there. For sure, this is something you're going to always want to do, is have the guard on this if you can. And run a test cut on this guy to make sure it's the right size. So you can do it on the short side if you have room. Since I have this tripod right there, remove it, it'll work. All right, put the dust collector on. Sample is done. So if I drop this in, I can see how tight that joint is. So look at that joint. That's very nice. Pretty much exactly what I want. I mean, it is what I want, not pretty much. That joint is nice because I can take it and I can move the piece, but it's a nice enough joint to where it moves freely. It doesn't bend this material. If you make this joint too small, the width of it, what's going to happen? As you push this piece in, you're actually going to cause this piece to curve. It's going to literally go like this, like and bend down, because you're going to squeeze this piece in and cause so much force. It's going to cause this flat piece to then bend. So you definitely don't want that to be too tight. And once you start assembling, trust me, you need to be able to move this guy, a 1/64 of an inch, a 1/16 of an inch, whatever it is that you need to move it. You won't be able to if that piece is too tight in here. If you had to take a mallet to bang the piece in, when you're gluing this up, you're going to have a lot of problems, because as you start banging that in, you're going to start banging this in, bang, bang. Then you're going to mushroom this edge, And that's not going to be a good, because when you put the next side in, it's not going to fit right. So you want to be careful not to have to mushroom this down. You can use a block of wood if you had to, but again, make this a little bit bigger than what you think you need. And trust me on this, you're going to get a lot better results. The whole cabinet with that piece is be able to slide around freely. My guess is you should probably check this to make sure that all the pieces fit in here just like that, because you could have a couple pieces that don't fit. Plywood is for sure this way. If you do plywood and you check it with one piece, you're most likely going to find you have at least a couple pieces that do not fit, and that's a problem. So you want to make sure that you size this for the biggest piece that you have, the thickest plywood, and make everything that size. And so the pieces that are smaller than that will fit in there with a little bit more space. That's all. That's not a big deal. The big deal is if this doesn't fit the pieces. So that's what you want.